So now American missiles raining down on parts of Iran. Yet again, the country's trading strikes for a second straight day. And the president moments ago, you heard the interview here on Fox saying there is more where that came from. There's a lot to get to, folks. Good morning, everybody. A lot of headlines as we come on the air on this Thursday morning in New York City. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning at home.
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. So we did not anticipate that President Trump interview on Fox and Friends. Are a few headlines that you noted.
Yeah, the suggestion about more bombing later tonight. You know, he signaled that in the Oval Office yesterday at noon when we were watching. And followed through on that as well. Pete Hegseth said something similar. He was traveling at Gitmo and also at CENTCOM in Tampa, Florida. So just watching that. Then he said toward the end of that interview, yes, we are still talking to them. So according to the president, there is still diplomacy behind the scenes there in the Middle East.
So we'll get you the other headlines. President Trump is threatening these dire consequences for Iran if it continues to drag its feet on a peace deal. And the president describes last night's strikes as violent and vicious.
Also, he says the U.S. fired 49 Tomahawk missiles, many of them aimed toward the area of Tehran. We'll show you that on a map in a moment here. He's also vowing to keep hitting Iran until a deal is reached. Here is what he said a moment ago with our colleagues on Fox and Friends.
And they're getting decimated, just decimated, and they're dying to make a deal. They want to make a deal so badly. And they're really in submission. They just don't know it yet, okay, to be honest with you. They just don't know it yet. And we are talking to them and all. But, you know, look, my preference has always been take Kharg Island.
Meanwhile, new video from CENTCOM shows U.S. forces firing Hellfire missiles at tankers trying to move Iranian oil. It's the third ship disabled this week as the U.S. continues to squeeze Tehran's economy. We have team coverage. Lauren Simonetti on what the president calls a secret mission to sneak oil through the Strait of Hormuz. But first, let's go to Trey Yingst. He's also spoken to the president several times in the last 24 hours, and he is live from Tel Aviv. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, hey, Dana, good morning. Overnight, the United States unleashed powerful strikes against the Iranian regime. U.S. Central Command says a variety of targets were hit, including Iranian surveillance sites and air defense systems. Speaking from the Situation Room overnight, President Trump told Fox News 49 Tomahawk missiles hit locations as close as 40 miles from the capital of Tehran. Positions were also targeted along the southwestern part of the country. The president described the strikes as violent and vicious. Also, President Trump says top Iranian officials called him directly, asking him to stop the bombing. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth spoke before the strikes began.
Instead, they're going to have tap, tap, tap bombs dropping on key facilities in Iran from the United States of America. And that's not because we want to restart anything we don't have to restart. It's because the War Department is prepared to set the terms to ensure that we get the kind of deal President Trump expects.
Now, in response, the Iranians launched ballistic missiles at U.S. forces in Kuwait and Bahrain, as well as Jordan. The Jordanian army says they took down 20 incoming missiles. Today, the Iranians are saying they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz. They've said this before, but we learned yesterday the United States was still getting millions of barrels of oil out of the Persian Gulf, even as the Iranians were making these statements. And so a significant development here, though, just last hour, as President Trump was on Fox and Friends and also posting on True Social, he says he's going to hit the Iranians again tonight and later may take Kharg Island. Bill, Dana?
All right. Trey, let me ask you, though, because I hear some sirens in the background. That could just be nothing. But what are you expecting there in the next few hours, 24 hours?
Look, the Israeli military remains on high alert because they are waiting to see how the Iranians are going to respond to this current situation. I spoke with an Israeli official last hour who said the president is in the bazaar. He's speaking Persian. And this was an indication the Israelis believe that President Trump is now speaking the language of the Iranians. And the president told me last night he was in the Situation Room alongside Vice President J.D. Vance and Special Envoys Kushner and Witkoff. And he said the Iranians only understand the language of force. And that's exactly what we saw last night. Those 49 Tomahawk missiles. There were U.S. fighter jets over the skies of Iran. Within hours, the Iranians again lost control of the skies of their own country. And what we saw were shaping operations by U.S. Central Command. They were going after the radar systems and the air defense that remains inside the country. This is a message to Tehran. Sign the deal or the bombing campaign will continue and you can't defend yourselves. Guys?
Trey Yingst, thank you, and please come back if you have any other breaking news. Bill?
Hey, Dana, let's go ahead and show you what we have now on the maps and what's transpired from U.S. Central Command on Wednesday. Self-defense strikes described by the United States, and here's what happened overnight. Talked a lot about the Strait of Hormuz, that choke point where so much travel goes by the sea, okay? So this is Keshem Island, Minab, Sirik as well. They were all hit overnight. The area of Isfahan apparently taking hits as well. What the president told Trey is that 49 Tomahawk missiles aimed at targets about 40 miles outside of Tehran. That might fit for Isfahan in the nuclear program that had been developed in that area. Now, with regard to Kharg Island, this all came out in the last 60 minutes or so. The reason why Kharg Island is so significant, it's well off the shore here. Well off, I'm saying 10, 15 miles, okay? But it's in deeper water, that's the point. So you can get these giant vessels from all over the world that can easily pull up the Kharg Island. They can load the oil onto their vessels and then move their way down through the Strait of Hormuz in this direction here. The reason why this is so significant is because if you take control of Kharg Island, you will take control yet again of the economy of Iran. Many military analysts coming on our air over the past several months said this is what you need to do. It hasn't been done. But if you take Kharg Island, you have to control it. And that means you put U.S. men and women in danger of taking fire on behalf of Iran. So keep that in mind if indeed there is a move on Kharg Island sometime tonight or in the coming days. Iran, meanwhile, has not sat back. They still have drone capability. They still have missile capability. And for the second straight night, we know they took aim at a U.S. air base that houses the F-35 in Jordan. We know overnight they've gone after the Fifth Fleet, again here stationed in Bahrain, and they've taken aim at Kuwait as well. The Kuwaitis are saying just about 2 hours ago that they engaged 24 incoming drones over the past 48 hours time, 24 drones in for Kuwait. Now, with regard to our firepower, I know there's a lot on this map. There's a reason why there's a lot on this map, because the U.S. naval assets are significant throughout the Middle East. And just so you can zero in, that's the Strait of Hormuz. Here's Tehran approximately up there in that part of the map. Let's leave this alone for a moment and talk about what's happening with the ceasefire. So there was a ceasefire declared in early April now, and a lot of people have debated whether or not it's a real ceasefire or whether or not the tit-for-tat continues. This is what we can say. Depending on how you define a ceasefire, it has held reasonably well for 60-plus days. That's not to suggest that there hasn't been tit-for-tat. The U.S. going after Iran, Iran going after Israel, and return fire on behalf of the Israelis. But let me take you to the far left part of this screen, okay? This is just the past several days. Today is Thursday. On Tuesday now, the U.S. struck back after a U.S. Apache helicopter that had been patrolling the coastline of Oman took a drone. And based on the description we're getting from the Pentagon, that drone lodged itself in between the cockpit of two pilots. They took the Apache down and went in the waters at sunset. They waited there for 2 hours until an unmanned drone, a water vessel, came across the ocean, rescued these two pilots, and pulled them to safety on board a helicopter. So the U.S. then and the president convinced that they needed to take action. And that is what we have seen based on the last 2 nights. Now, Jimmy will slide over here and show you one more map. So we talked a lot about the Strait of Hormuz. This is the U.S. blockade, which still exists today, okay? It was established here off the eastern tip of Oman, heading right over to the border between Iran and Pakistan. This has been successful. Okay, if you look at the numbers here, 9 vessels have been disabled, meaning they were taking warning signs on behalf of the U.S. military not to go to an Iranian port, not to make a visit, not to make a stop. And apparently, for whatever reason, those vessels did not listen, and they were engaged and disabled, including one in the last 24 hours that apparently is flying under an Indian flag. We'll try and confirm that in a moment here. In the meantime, you had 135 ships. These are ocean-going vessels that have been redirected, which means they did stop at Iranian ports or had the intent to go to an Iranian port, and that is the number we have thus far. There's some video here of the Gulf of Oman out of one of those vessels. These are huge ocean-going craft. They can stay at sea for months at a time, go all over the world. This is some video that CENTCOM had shared with us showing that vessel being disabled. So hope all of that gives you a bit of perspective for where we think this conflict is at the moment on this Thursday morning. With that, I'll go back to Dana across the break.
An excellent recap. Thank you so much. And let's bring in retired Navy SEAL officer Mike Sarraille. I want to ask you about just militarily in terms of the strategy of announcing that strikes are coming, because sometimes you have the element of surprise. But now, what does this do? I guess it possibly is to try to get them to come to the table before they get hit?
Yeah, the reason we can expose that we're going to hit them is, one, because we have air dominance. And last night was a perfect example. We hit air defenses, radar and surveillance systems, as well as command and control nodes. What Trump has done is basically cleared the highway for what's to come. He's lowered the risk to troops and our strike fighters. But you would not do that on a different occasion in a war where we did not have that dominance. And Dana, really, what happens moving forward is like a scene from a movie. You've got a hostage tied to the chair, Iran. They're already bloodied up. Trump has essentially come in and laid out the tools. You got those pliers that rip out fingernails. You got the ball peen hammer. And he's essentially saying, we are going to continue to hit you. It's going to become more painful and more expensive with each subsequent hit until you sign that deal. But the deal is important. It's got to look at the complete opposite of the JCPOA. We're not going to release sanctions for concessions later. There's got to be conditions, and there's got to be consequences, and there has to be timelines.
So I think if the Iranians are watching this, they need to take the president at his word. At his word, rather. He said we're going back again tonight. Let's see if that happens. Here's what he said in the Oval Office yesterday. Quickly, question and answer.
Are you going to go back to attack, or are you thinking of attacking Iranian power plants and bridges as you've
well, I'm not going to say that to you, but I can do that.
Okay, so the power plants and the bridges were not hit, but the radar sites were hit. But what he did say is that they were going back to hit different targets again tonight, meaning last night, which they did. Now you've got these competing opinions, and here's one from the Wall Street Journal. Trump needs a new Iran strategy. He has hope for Iranian concessions, but he abandoned much of his leverage by showing he would not countenance a return to war. The way for Mr. Trump to right the ship is to go on offense, but that means more than pounding Iran. The task at hand is to open the strait to allied ships. On the same day, the New York Post came out with a scathing editorial saying that he's got people around him who's giving him bad advice. Do you think the commander-in-chief has been given bad advice during this conflict?
No, I don't. So Trump has given diplomacy a shot here, coercive diplomacy, and he's given them grace, and the Iranians slapped that hand away. So now he's using really calculated escalation until he gets them to where he wants. But guys, look at the blockade. Economically, they're crippled. Now, can he strike civilian or I would say rather than civilian mission-critical infrastructure? Yes, that's on the plate, but he's using escalation to get to that point. And he's keeping the Persian people in mind. He does not want to create, overdue or undue hardship to them. But for the Persian people, and they know this, they would rather have freedom under hardship rather than no freedom at all. But it would be crippling to the Iranian regime if they lose power, desalination plants, and even some of their oil infrastructure. And that's where Kharg Island comes into play.
All right, Mike Sarraille, thank you so much for joining us this morning on this breaking news. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.